Ecosystem may provide us number of ecological services for food security, for health security, for energy security. These are the services that we're getting every day from the ecosystem, diversity of the ecosystem. As far as currently, due to the number of the threats that our ecosystem facing, number one, habitat destruction, population pollution are the major threats to the ecosystem. Fast climatic changes, overexploitation of the natural resources, and invasive species and agriculture extension. These are threats that are currently we are facing throughout the world. To overcome these threats, it is the need of time to wake up, to take the action, to protect the nature, to protect the environment. Our research projects in Quaid I Azam universities are basically focusing on sustainability, conservation, and restoration. For these projects, we are focusing on the databasing of the plant biodiversity, particularly the Himalaya, Karakoram, Hindu Kush, salt trend, and number of the diverse ecological habitat in Pakistan. We are focusing on the conservation and the databasing of the plant diversity. At the same time, we are focusing on the alternative medicinal resources, that is the conservation of the medicinal plant that are very important for our nutraceutical, pharmaceutical, cosmeceutical, and green chemistry in Pakistan. At the same time, we are focusing on to search of the alternative biomass or the biofuel resources, because by the burning of the fossil fuels we are emitting, we are producing a very high amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. So overcome this emissions, to reduce these emissions, we are focusing on a green energy that is eco-friendly, that is alternative biofuels with respect to the carbon reductions in this country. Pakistan hosted a very high alpine ecosystem, that is the Desai Plateau, our northern area, that is Gilgit-Baltistan. These are the richest ecosystem with respect to a very unique endemic floral diversity. So we are the country that is the highest altitude or alpine ecosystem. And to protect these ecosystems for coming generation, to make our environment clean and green. We have published a paper about the endemic species that are distributed in the northern Gilgit-Baltistan and the western Himalaya. This area is a very unique floral position in the world. So this area is very important with respect to the conservation of the important floral diversity with respect to the higher alpine ecosystem. When we move from higher alpine to the subalpine, we are also hosting the subalpine ecosystem, that is the richest moist temperate forest. So this area is also an important region with respect to the Pakistan. So this area is also supporting a very biggest amount of the biodiversity, that's the birds, the fishes, the mammals, the insects, and number of the very important unique endemic species. So this ecosystem is also important to protect it, to conserve it for the future generation. We have published a paper recently in 2021 about the important medicinal plant diversity of the subalpine regions of Chitral and surrounding area, that is a trans-border area between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and China. So this area is very important, unique ecosystem diversity. Another important area of our Pakistan is we are hosting a very rich glacial ecosystem. This ecosystem also supports a number of the sages, number of the grasses, and a number of unique wildlife, that is the snow leopard, snow bear, so many other the birds that are migratory birds from Russia, China. So this ecosystem is also important to restore it, to protect it, and conserve it. When we move toward the moist temperate area, we are also hosting the moist temperate ecosystem in our KPK, Herbal area. So this area is also important with respect to the natural resources, that is the water resources, the wild fruits, wild vegetables, and number of the non-timber forest products. So for the sustainability, to achieve the sustainable development goal, this area is also one of the important aspects with respect to the ecosystem. We have published a study on the wild diversity of wild fruits that are an alternative food resources for nutrition, nutraceutical industry. So this area demands extensive protection and conservation in accordance to the global conservation strategies by the IUCN, WWF, Plant Life, and number of the organizations that the United Nations Environmental Program focusing this area to protect the biodiversity and the ecosystem of this area to sustain the life associated with this ecosystem. When we move toward the plain areas of Punjab is one of the important agriculture sites with respect to this country. We are hosting a dried scrub vegetation or a dried scrub ecosystem in the salt range, a very big range. So this area is also important with respect to the bird diversity, the plant diversity, and the other animals that are found in this area. So by protecting the dry scrub ecosystem, we can protect a number of the wildlife in this area. We have published a very recent study in 2021 about the wildlife diversity and their conservation of medicinal plant in the salt range of Punjab. When we move toward the deserts of Sindh, Pakistan is also a beautiful country with a number of richest deserts ecosystem in Sindh. So this area is also important with respect to the xeric flora, fauna and avian diversity with respect to the global importance of the biodiversity. In 2020, we have published a book about the plant and human health with respect to the people of the deserts of Sindh. When we move toward the dry scrub ecosystem in Balochistan, this area is also global importance with respect to the junipers. So this area hosts a number of the biodiversity with respect to the world. The junipers are the second largest forest in the country. So this area also needs an extensive demand about the conservation of these junipers for the sustainability. We have published a study on the juniper forest resources and the natural resources of Balochistan. Because we are getting a large number of the non-timber forest products, that is the wild fruits, wild vegetables, gums, raisins, honey and number of other non-timber forest products from these ecosystems. So it is very important to protect and conserve the ecosystem with respect to the sustainability of the alternative foods, alternative medicines and alternative energy. These are few glimpses of my research laboratory that is working in accordance with the global lines about the conservation of these germplasm seed banks, about the conservation of wild fruits, wild vegetables and endemic species of Pakistan for the future studies. We are also focusing about the conservation of the insect pollinators, the bee pollinators, because the bee pollinators or insect pollinators are very important for conservation of the indigenous crop diversity. In one of our projects, we are working with the Turkish governments according to the TÜBİTAK that we are protecting and conserving a number of the insects or the bees for a natural pollinator for the conservation of our natural gene pool of our crops. Why we call that ecosystem restoration is very important? Because ecosystem restoration is very important because it sustains our health security. This is a very important with respect to the healthy life, that to conserve the ecosystem. We have identified number of the endemic species from Pakistan and China, and these species demand the very important protection care because these species are red listed according to the IUCN. So we are focusing on the conservation of these endemic species with respect to Pakistan, Himalaya, Western Himalaya and our surroundings. We have published a paper with the Chinese Academy of Sciences about the health security of the medicinal plant and the natural drugs that we are getting from these natural plant resources. What are the steps that are very important for the ecosystem restoration? We are working on a bottom-up approach that will first to discuss about the local strategies by the local communities. Involvement of the local communities is very important for the ecosystem conservation because it is a triangle strategy, that is to involve the local communities, then involve the academia about the research, and then the policy makers or the government or NGOs for the joint venture of the conservation of the ecosystem in our country. It is another important tree that is found in Punjab, that is the Ticomela undulata. Recent year it faces threats and its population is going to be disappear. So it is a time of the forest sector to conserve indigenous forest trees in accordance to the billion tree tsunami. These are few important species from Punjab that needs extensive conservation strategies for the future generation. Another important area for because this environmental day is hosted in this year by Pakistan. The theme is ecosystem restoration. Pakistan is basically working on the environmental that to make our environment greener and cleaner. So we are focusing on alternative energy resources in order to reduce the carbon emission in our atmosphere. So Pakistan is relying on alternative energy resources, that is solar energy, wind energy and biofuel energy. In my research group, we are focusing on the indigenous non-edible greener energy, that are the materials that are used for the production of the greener energy for cleaner environment. This is one of the important trees that is a part of billion tree tsunami, that is the Pongamia pinnata. It is indigenous to Pakistan and India. We are planting this species in the Patwar region, Punjab regions and KPK to make our road green, that the seeds are used for the biofuels as well. These are some glimpses that we have developed in Quaid I Azam University to raise the nursery and seedling of the indigenous trees to become a part of a billion tree tsunami. We have published one of the joint venture with the Chinese Academy of Sciences along CPEC to identify the green non-edible oil seeds that are used as indigenous energy crops. Basically, the purpose of this study is to reduce the carbon emissions of the burning fossil fuel. So we are focusing on eco-friendly, alternative, non-edible green plants. Their seeds are used only for the production of biofuel. These are few recent studies that we have published with our research group working in Malaysia, Turkey and Chinese Academy of Sciences and Quaid I Azam University of Pakistan. At the same time, in Quaid I Azam University, we established a very big botanical garden for the conservation of an endemic or a threatened species that needs extensive conservation strategies. So we are focusing on the red listed species of Pakistan to be protected for the future research, for the future studies, for the future generation. Our research group is working throughout the Pakistan. Dr. Yasin, my research member, is working on the ecosystem restoration in a desert part of the Sindh. He has published a number of the studies about the desert areas of Sindh to protect, to create the awareness for the conservation of the desert floral and faunal diversity. Another guy from my research group, Amir, he is working about the conservation of the lower plants, because in Pakistan a very lesser work has been conducted on the lower plant, that is the bryophyte, pteridophyte. So we are focusing on very important environment and bioindicator of bryophyte to protect it, to document it for the conservation point of view. A few glimpses of a very unique floral diversity of the lower plant. We have published a study from Pakistan about the pteridophyte diversity, because none of study exists prior to this in Pakistan. So this is a very important area with respect to the botanical research to document the lower forest indicator that are very sensitive plants which show a high sensitivity toward the fast climatic changes. So we are focusing about these bioindicators in our research group. Mariam, she is working on the diversity and the conservation of the wetland ecosystem in the Western Himalaya. She has working on documentation of the Western wetland floral and faunal diversity to protect our lakes, to protect our wetlands for the sustainability of our endemic species that are distributed in a diverse wetland ecosystem in Pakistan. In 2021, we have published a book about the conservation of wetland plant diversity in Pakistan. Mariam completed a PhD and produced this wonderful book about the wetland diversity with respect to the diversity and conservation of wetland flora with respect to Pakistan. Dr. Moona, she is working about the allophatic diversity, because in salt range and Punjab areas and deserts of Sindh and Balochistan, there is a diversity of the allophyte, but none of study about the documentation and conservation activities as linked to the allophyte. So we are focusing about the indigenous allophyte diversity for conservation to restore the allophatic ecosystem in Pakistan. Dr. Shumaila, she is working on the arid zone ecosystem. She is focusing about the ecosystem that sustain the life of arid parts of Pakistan. Another researcher from my research group, Dr. Shafiq, is working on the Quaid I Azam ecosystem. This is a big area with respect to the trans border, that is Pakistan, Balochistan. So this area is neglected throughout the botanical history. So this area is also important with respect to the Quaid I Azam ecosystem range. In my group, we have digitized our herbarium in accordance with Global Biodiversity Facility. So this project we have initiated in 2018 about the databasing, digitization of floral diversity of Pakistan in accordance to the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. We are the largest herbarium with respect to 0.2 million specimens we have protected, conserved and digitized in our herbarium in accordance to the Global Biodiversity. Diversity of the Himalaya, the Eastern Himalaya is documented and digitized by the Chinese Academy of Sciences. By the Western Himalaya, we are going to digitize and document this diversity of Western Himalaya with respect to Pakistan. Same time, we have published another book about the plant biodiversity of the Lesser Himalaya, which was awarded by the HEC the best book about the biodiversity of the Himalaya. This is another book we have published about the alternative wild edible food resources, how to protect, how to conserve the wild edible for sustainable use as the alternative food resources to overcome the food crisis in Pakistan, to protect it, to cultivate it, to conserve it for sustainable utilization. At the same time, our world and Pakistan is facing a climate change. So we are focusing about the climate change, how our ecosystem facing the problems of the climate change. So we have developed some strategies about to combat with the fast climatic changes, to conserve, to restore our ecosystem. So this is some small contribution from my research group, that we are producing a number of the research projects, publishing a number of the papers, books and citation and the projects, and we are working with a number of the academies, World Academy of Sciences, Chinese Academy of Sciences, Turkish Academy of Sciences, Italian government, UK, database for the medicinal part, and the United Nations about the global biodiversity. So our research group is basically focusing to work on different parts of Pakistan in accordance to the global biodiversity and ecosystem services with respect to this country. Quaid I Azam University is the top ranked university in the country, and it is the only university from Pakistan that is included in 500 universities of the world. And yesterday the ranking by QS ranking, the only university from Pakistan is the top 100 university of the Asia. At the end, I just conclude this day with respect to the Environment Day, that is the nature wants love and care. So it is the time to wake up, to take the action, to protect the nature, to conserve the environment for the protection of these very important natural resources. Natural ecosystem restoration is the need of the time to wake up, to take the action, to protect the habitat, to make our air clean, to reduce the burning of the fossil fuels, to work on the renewable alternative food, energy and medicine resources. So it is the time that the nature wants love and care.